there's a maybe a half decent topic actually. I was just thinking to myself, the NHS and what do I think to it, and with the whole, well, reasonably recent stuff going on in the US and their national health care and blah blah blah. I can't comment on the well, I can comment on the Yank service actually. That's a lie, and I'm going to. There was a chap, and I can't for the life of me remember his name. I did a vlog on it a wee while ago. He was knocked off his motorcycle, no fault of his own. And suffered quite horrific injuries. And the problem was he couldn't get insured because he was diabetic. So there's... Or maybe he couldn't afford to get insured. Perhaps that's the answer. I don't know. I'll put your lights on, you idiot. Yeah, he was... either case, maybe he couldn't afford to... Because you're diabetic, your insurance premiums go massive, right? So I can't afford to get to get health insurance. And then the inevitable happens, an accident, no fault of his own, and suddenly he's got hundreds of thousands of pounds medical bill. Hundreds of thousands of pounds. That's like you're waking up tomorrow and someone's saying, "Oh, by the way, you see this house here? Yeah, you got to pay for it." You know what? It's shocking. And there are obviously some people in the States who can't afford health insurance. So what happens? You run over in the street, the ambulance comes up and checks you've got a credit card first. I mean, of course, as another Yank friend of mine's pointed out, it only helps the poor because you get your Mexican immigrants and whatnot come along. Of course, they can't refuse to treat people, and so your poor person gets treated and just absconds. Can't afford no way in the world can afford to pay it, so it simply doesn't. Come on, get a move on. We ain't got all day. Some of us have got lives to get to. Yeah. So with the NHS. So thankfully for me, very fortunately, I don't have to. I've had to visit the doctor perhaps 3 times in my life. And if you saw the KTM footage where I fell off my motorcycle at 40 miles an hour, I've had a nagging complaint since then. I hate stopping here. I should have stopped more in the centre of the lane really to stop people forcing their way by. Yeah, you try and command your road space to prevent people squeezing past dangerously. I've had a mirror clipped on here. The last thing I want to be doing is rear-ended. On topic. Yeah, so I went to the docks yesterday, and go to the docks. He says, "Oh, you've hurt your ribs." Checks me out. Don't cost me anything. Says, "You better go for an X-ray." Writes me an X-ray slip up. Don't cost me anything. Today I'm going to go for an X-ray. Won't cost me anything. The results will go back to the doctor. Won't cost me anything. And the doctor will say, "There's nothing wrong with you, you big wimp. Shut up and sit down." Hopefully. And I kind of like that system. The beautiful thing is as well, if you want, like the States, private medical care. Over here, if you want private medical care, sure, get your wallet out. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the NHS as far as I'm concerned, but there are places where there are problems. The NHS can't afford to pay for certain cancer drugs. But then, in these circumstances, I guess, there are a few sort of postcode lottery bits that, you read things in the paper. I've never come across them myself, thankfully. Yeah, that could be a problem, possibly. But, the bottom line is, it's free. Which part of that is bad? But then, having said that, I do moan at the amount of tax we're raped for. So nothing's free, is it? Of course it's not free. You pay for it somehow. But, it's affordable by everyone. How horrible would it be that what exactly are you doing? give us a clue so I can get by. How horrible would it be that you're ill and you know, the treatment's there, it's right there, it's under your nose, but can't afford it. You know, that there's been, such as I talked about, the cancer drugs on the NHS, you know. If you had this drug, it would prolong your life by years. But some government body says, sorry, can't afford to buy you that. You know, what price is your life worth? Turn your lights on. I was driving in I was driving in fog the other day, and I couldn't see 10 feet in front of me, and people didn't have the lights on. I'm just, you know, it's the sort of weather where you should have dual fog lights on, and you know, be driving at 3 miles an hour, and people are just bombing along, no lights. And I think certainly in the UK, people have got it so backwards. I was saying to someone, who was I driving with? I was in the car with someone. I said, put your lights on. He says, no, I can see fine. I said, no, you selfish twat. It's not about what you can see. Your lights are for other people, predominantly. You know, I'm driving along now in a wet, fogged up visor. You know, unfortunately, my visibility is a tiny bit restricted as it is. But it's a murky day. If you put your lights on, you know, I can see you coming. If there's a car with lights on behind me, I haven't even got to look in my mirror. Just out the corner of my eye, I can see the lights. If you're a black car with no lights on in these dark, dreary days, and I'm driving along and, you know, I've got a wet, fogged up visor, all these things make you very hard to see. Rant, 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 rant. And the other thing is, of course, you know, you have these health insurances and things, and this is another Yank friend of mine. He had medical complaints, and his insurance, no, you're not covered. Oh, yeah, that was it. You go to the wrong hospital. Sorry, you went to the wrong hospital. We're not covering that. Oh, sorry, I was bleeding to death. I didn't realise I had to choose. What was it he had? His appendix. If he hadn't have had it solved in an amount of time, he would have died from it. And they said, no, you've gone to the wrong hospital. So we're only going to cover, you know, 70% of the claim. So he had to find thousands of pounds, or you know, it's a rarity for people to have just thousands of pounds lying about. But having said that, you know, I'm moaning that